Hello, everyone watching. My name is Dewan Smiley, and as the title suggests, I'm doing a case study on the AT&T and Time Warner merger deal. And from what I understand, the initial talks began because of consumers' increasing need for digital and streaming services, prompted by the growth and success of Netflix and Hulu. Time Warner was a highly sought-after company for acquisition to aid anyone who wanted to enter the streaming realm. Having owned a lot of desirable assets and IPs like Cartoon Network, HBO, Warner Brothers, CNN, Turner Cable, and more, to that fact, in 2014, Time Warner was approached by 20th Century Fox with a bargain position of $85 a share when Time Warner was worth more than that for that offer. The Time Warner CEO, Jeff Bukes, stated that he was open to selling just at the right price. Around the time of October 2016, AT&T and Time Warner had been talking about the potential benefits gained from a merger. In an interview I found on the Bloomberg site, Ed Hammond described these talks as more of a relationship building than straightforward merger discussion. Also, apparently, the process for these negotiations and discussions moved very quickly. In that same interview, John Butler, Bloomberg Intelligence, even said that AT&T sees the writing on the wall, that to compete in a more digital world, owning content puts you in a favorable position in the market, comparing it to Comcast, which owns its own content and can distribute it as well. This is more than likely what was driving AT&T to complete the deal as soon as possible, even blatantly communicating their underlying interests on their website. But there's little more to it than that. Like I said, the writing was on the walls. It seems to be more about staying relevant and using their resources to do so. AT&T was understanding that everyone who wanted a cell phone service had some sort of subscription. AT&T sees the acquisition of Time Warner as an opportunity to become more like Google and Facebook, with how they know everything about people in order to use and sell information to advertise it back to those customers, with the hopes of getting customers to come back to their TV service. With Time Warner thinking seemingly the same thing about their underlying interests to stay relevant, with execs on that side saying practically the same thing. They're trying to keep up with the digital ways of the world, and to do that, they want to collect data on their customers to help them decide on what content to create, as well as selling ads to those specific people and not just to an overall general demographic. Time Warner feels that to stay relevant, they need to use the data they'll collect to target specific niches. Now, looking at the terms of the transaction, if it goes through, before and after the merger, it seems like AT&T's bargaining position was any price that would help them acquire Time Warner. I say that because before the merger was fully complete, it looked like both sides were in agreement from the start of the negotiations, with AT&T intending to buy all of Time Warner for $108.7 billion. And of that $108.7 billion, $107.50 per share would go to Time Warner shareholders in a form of cash and stock split of a $53.75 per share in cash and $53.75 per share in AT&T stock, equaling $85.4 billion for the shareholders. AT&T on their website even stated that the agreement has been approved unanimously by the board of directors on both companies. However, there's a little more to it than that, but I'll get into that later. So what makes this deal beneficial to both parties is primarily about both of their interests to compete with tech giants like Netflix, Amazon, Apple, Facebook, and Google. Those companies are both media and distribution companies, among other things. And that's what each of those companies do singularly. AT&T and Time Warner both wanted to compete and stay relevant in a changing world. And by combining those companies, they believe that they can stand a chance. Each side would benefit in three ways. AT&T would have the premium content to distribute to consumers, while Time Warner would have an easier way to distribute their content to consumers. Both would benefit by gaining a wider reach in the market, and more importantly, they have a chance of surviving and competing against the tech giant companies. However, the government did not approve this vertical merger, saying that it would harm the consumer. The government went a step further to sue to block the merger. At this point, AT&T wasn't really worried about it, having tons of industry standards working on their side. The government feared that the merger of those two companies would give AT&T too much power over the competition and consumers. The CEO of AT&T at the time, Randall Stevenson, hits on several standards. In the expert evaluation category, he talks about how Jeff Bukes and he had the best legal minds agree that the transaction would be approved. approved. Not to mention that they had decades of legal precedent on how the merger would more than likely be evaluated. Another more important detail to acknowledge here is that the claim of AT&T's power gain from the merger. Randall Stevenson also talks about how Netflix has over 100 million customers. Amazon has over 60 million that they were creating content for and distributing right to their customers. Then went on to add Facebook and Google into the mix with their over a billion customers that they can distribute content to as well. While AT&T and Time Warner only had around 30 million customers combined. Even then, for each customer that had both AT&T and was a consumer of Time Warner content, then that customer was two numbers for each company becomes one for the merged company. From what I understand, even if the government won the lawsuit, AT&T would have to pay $500 million to Time Warner to back out of the deal. This is essentially forcing them to have to BATNA, but in this case, based on a video and information around those years, I can see that AT&T could have merged or acquired Discovery as their BATNA. Before I get into Time Warner's BATNA, I wanted to discuss a few things I believe went well with this deal. One thing is that AT&T fought the government from a solid foundation of antitrust laws and won. Time Warner turned into Warner Media and launched HBO Max, and in my eyes was at perfect timing, right at the beginning of the pandemic. And together, they differentiated themselves from the rest of their competition. Now, what went wrong for me is, for all that fighting to preserve the merger of Time Warner, then only for a few years to pass since they won the antitrust suit and officially merged, for AT&T to spin them off as Warner Media to Discovery. I don't get that point at all. But not before several executives from Warner Media left the company from a rumor of a restructuring happening. To later then, AT&T lays off 800 employees, primarily from the Warner and HBO family. To end this, I have been holding on to this information about Time Warner, and this goes back to their BATNA, and if they reach an agreement. First, I'll talk about the agreement. Technically, yes, they did reach an agreement. They both felt that with their combined companies, they could survive the tech companies and thrive based off of what each company brought to the table. The last thing I wanted to finally talk about is Time Warner's BATNA. In a video interview about the aftermath of AT&T laying off hundreds of Warner employees and the spinoff of Warner Media, the former CEO, Jeff Buick, said, "We had to merge with someone. We needed to get the addressability so that you can watch your favorite shows on the networks that you were used to seeing them on, and they were moving over to these digital companies. So we needed a platform, whether it was Amazon or an alliance with Disney or something with Apple." I think the thought of two diminishing companies coming together to try to match the content creation and distribution power that these tech companies have is a good idea, especially when they're trying to stay relevant in a changing world where your model really doesn't fit in. Trying to stay innovative is a great thing, but from the video I watched, perhaps Time Warner was desperate and should have stepped back before they jumped into bed with AT&T to see what other offers they could get. In hindsight, it seems that AT&T was trying to take advantage of Time Warner, but bit off more than they could chew. In any case, now that Warner Media and Discovery have merged to become Warner Bros. Discovery this past April, hopefully they'll stay together and prosper. This marks the end of my presentation on a case study about the AT&T and Time Warner merger deal. My name is Dewan Smiley. Thanks for watching. Out.